Portugal's tax system is changing in a big way, and if you're planning to move here or already living in Portugal, you need to know what's happening. The government has replaced the NHR tax regime with something new, NHR 2.0. But what does that actually mean for you? Will you save money, or could you end up paying more? Today, I'm sitting down with Fresh Portugal, a top tax and legal firm, to break down exactly what's changing, who benefits, and what you need to do next. Stick around. Understanding these changes now could save you massively.
Well, we've had NHR 1.0, and now we're into NHR 2.0. What is NHR 2.0?
NHR 2.0 is the new tax benefits scheme in Portugal. It's similar to NHR 1.0 in many ways, especially in the benefit that it offers. There's small differences, but it's kind of the same thing. The big difference is in the entry into the scheme. NHR 1.0 was automatic. Everyone who came to Portugal could have it.
Okay.
NHR 2.0, there's a qualification criteria. So it's a lot more hoops to jump through. If you can satisfy the requirements, fundamentally the same kind of benefits, almost the same.
Okay, and who qualifies for it?
There is lots of routes to qualifications, maybe 7 different groups. Some of them are university professors, medical doctors, so specific professions in specific industries. And some of them are more general, so different people can qualify. The ones that are probably the most interesting or the most relevant to most people is the startup route, either working in a certified startup or a board member in a certified startup, and certain companies in certain industries. So whether people set up their own company or they work for an existing company. In certain industries, in certain professions, some people will qualify. So the kind of professions that Portugal wants to encourage, IT services, and again, doctors, senior people in different director positions, these sort of things. Each route has a different entity that certifies it.
Oh,
so
fun.
It's YAPME for certain companies, the tax authorities for other types of routes, Startup Portugal for the startup route. So the process now is a lot more complicated than it used to be.
Okay.
Once you know how it works, it's not actually that complicated.
And what are the benefits that people get?
The previous NHR had 20% flat tax rate on income from employment and self-employment sourced in Portugal. That is retained in the new scheme.
Okay.
And also an exemption for foreign sourced income, such as dividends, interest, and similar types of foreign sourced income. That's actually been expanded in the new scheme. The previous NHR system did not have capital gains as an automatic qualification, only capital gains for securities. It did have capital gains for real estate. Capital gains for securities, because Portugal doesn't have a taxing right for everyone unless they're American. So Americans did have it, but non-Americans didn't have capital gains exemption. So now people under the new scheme will have a capital gains exemption, which is a very interesting opportunity. Notably, the one big group that's the losers of the new scheme is pensioners.
Okay.
So pension income is completely excluded. And pension is quite it's retirement income in a much wider sense. If people are relying on retirement income to come to Portugal, this is the big losing group. Retirement income is no longer included in the new scheme.
Okay, so for people that had these tax benefits through NHR 1.0, they will retain those, like be grandfathered in.
Yeah,
so new people into the program.
Just talking about new people. So everyone who has NHR 1.0 keeps it. Portuguese law doesn't allow to take people's rights retroactively. So anyone who got in under the previous scheme is going to keep the benefits until the end of the scheme and will also not be part of the new scheme. The new scheme clearly exempts people that benefited from the old scheme. Just the new people coming, they will no longer have the previous NHR. If they're only relying on pension income, that's the losing group.
Okay.
Some are winning. For example, non-Americans. A European tech founder is about to exit their company and wants to come to a jurisdiction where they will not pay capital gains tax on exit. Will be a big winner now because they had an exemption before and now they will. Otherwise, quite similar. Dividends, interest, exempt under the new scheme.
Who exactly qualifies for this? Foreigners or Portuguese people as well?
Portuguese people as well, as long as they haven't been tax residents for 5 years in Portugal.
Okay,
Also
so
same as before. Very similar. The main difference is how you get in, which is more hoops to jump through. Still an application on the Finanzas website, but then the application is then forwarded to the certifying entity, depending on which route exactly do you go through. And the certifying entity is supposed to certify within a month, and then it would be approved. But we expect it to work just fine.
So is that on the individual that's applying to go find what entity they need to be connected with, or does that happen automatically through the portal?
They need to say how they qualify.
Okay.
So they need to know that they qualify and they need to meet the qualification criteria before they apply. And then when they apply, they say how they qualify. Then it's forwarded to the relevant entity that actually confirms that's the case. They also attach supporting documentation. So you need to really prove that you qualify now.
How have these benefits kind of changed over the past 5-10 years? Like from the beginning of NHR, where I believe that there was no tax on
pension, yeah.
And then it went to 10%. They got rid of it, and now it's evolved to this 2.0.
Yeah. Initially, you needed to prove your high value activity.
Okay.
That was in the first 2 years or so. Then became a self-declaration type thing, and then that's when it started working properly. Initially, it was 0% on pension, and there's been a couple of changes in the list of high-value activities, but that's pretty much it. Other than that, the scheme was pretty stable.
Okay.
And now there's obviously this big change, which is a great change. We love this. The reason we love it is because it's a bit political. The big problem with the NHR is that it was created to bring capital to Portugal. But it wasn't created to bring investment into Portugal. Kind of unintentionally, it created a disincentive for people to invest in Portugal. Because if you exempt all the foreign gains and you tax all the local gains, you essentially encourage people not to invest locally. It creates a disconnect. And you know better than everyone, Josh, that people come to Portugal and sometimes they live in complete disconnect from the local community.
Sure.
I think you're advocating against it as well.
Correct.
Big part of this is learn the language, integrate with locals, become part of the local culture. There's more to it, especially the sort of people that we work with at Fresh. They tend to be pretty successful in what they do. They come to Portugal and they wake up in the morning, they open their laptops, they work in their remote jobs, they meet their expat friends, they send their children to the expat schools, and they never really fully integrate.
Right.
And they haven't had any incentive to. But even people who want to integrate find it pretty difficult. I mean, Portuguese society is pretty close. It's not so easy to break into social circles. People that come here don't know much about what's happening in Portugal in terms of the real economy. It's not the jobs market, doesn't have huge multinationals offering thousands of jobs, so it's quite hard to get in. Now that you have to be part of the ecosystem in some way in order to get tax benefit, it's a great facilitator for that to actually happen, and this is what we're excited about. We hope that especially the startup route, which is the easiest one and arguably the best one, would be a fantastic facilitator for people to engage with local startups, join companies, and particularly in the board positions. Someone who's a software developer or a marketeer or a salesperson for an American corporation and has a lot of skill and has a lot of contribute, and a lot of our clients are like that. If they now find a board position, ideally with an investment involved in a local company, they can both bring their skill and support a local company and help them grow and also become part of the ecosystem and integrate better. So it's really a win-win, and for us it's very, very exciting.
Nice.
It's harder to do, but we think it's very positive. And yeah, I mean, we get that the pensioners are not so happy because Portugal is becoming more expensive to retire for sure. By the way, pensioners that have investment accounts, they can still potentially have exemptions on standard investment money. It's just the retirement accounts that are suffering. We think it's fair. People coming to Portugal will be using the Portuguese healthcare system, will be using the infrastructure. We think it's fair that Portugal now wants them to pay more taxes.
Sure.
Whether it's fair or not, it makes sense to try and encourage people that are still working to take part of the local real financial ecosystem, which hasn't happened until now.
Okay, one question I wanted to ask was regarding the autonomous regions. So there's a couple regions, the Azores and Madeira, that can do things differently. So are we talking about tax benefits for all of Portugal, or do those two do something different?
All the routes apply to all of Portugal. There is another route specifically designed for the islands, but they're not using it yet.
Okay, so it's not in place yet?
It's in the law, but they have the authority to regulate something different, so they can expand it even more, but they haven't done it until now. I've spoken to some politicians on the islands. They don't seem to be particularly aware. So yeah, maybe it will happen at some point, but right now the situation in the islands is the same.
I wanted to ask you about 3 deadlines. So first, when is the deadline that someone needs to apply for this new NHR, this NHR 2.0?
So for people who met the qualification criteria in 2024, there's not that many because the old scheme's still under the transition period.
Yeah.
It was initially the 15th of March, and now it's been extended to the 31st of March.
Okay.
Hopefully won't be extended again. For future years, it's going to be the 15th of January.
Okay.
The year after you became a tax resident.
Okay.
But unlike the previous scheme, if you missed the deadline, you just missed the year. So if you apply the year later, you just missed the year of tax benefits, but you can still apply a year later.
Okay, interesting.
Missing the deadline is less of a disaster than it used to be.
Right. Because it was a complete disaster with NHR 1.0.
It's actually illegal the way the tax authorities have been applying that. And there's a lot of jurisprudence that the fact that they've forced that deadline on people and then haven't granted NHR, including Supreme Administrative Court decisions, which is the highest tribunal, that it's actually, they should have granted NHR, even if people miss the deadline. So in practice, the authorities would have rejected even a day late application. Probably because this happened in the new scheme, they said, well, you just miss a year.
Okay. What about the filing deadline? When does someone need to file by? Just general taxes.
Tax season in Portugal starts on the 1st of April, ends at the end of June.
And then when does someone need to pay their taxes by? So they get their bill in anywhere between April and June.
They file between April and June. You usually get your bill around August. That's how it's been in the last few years.
That's our experience as well, yeah.
Yeah,
August.
I mean, it could be a little bit earlier, a little bit later. Some people get their bill earlier.
We don't file that early, so
Yeah.
Okay, so jumping back to NHR 2.0 specifically, how long is it good for?
So it's also a program for 10 years.
Okay.
But there is a difference. The previous program, again, because it's automatic qualification, you would just have it for 10 years. With the new system, you need to prove your eligibility every year.
Oh, okay.
So it's like a reconfirmation. You'll need to fill a form saying, I'm still eligible, I'm still a director in a startup or working in a company that trade or in an export company is another route. You will need to reconfirm eligibility every year.
If you're interested in learning more about Fresh Portugal, click on the link below. And if you want to see more of Expats Everywhere, we have a playlist right here for you. Now, let's get moving. Bye.